is now time for the Robesonian Sports Report with Chris Stiles on 97.1 FM, 1340 AM, WAGR in Lumberton, covering sports for Robeson County. Now here's your host, Chris Stiles.
And welcome to the Robesonian Sports Report here on WAGR. I'm Chris Stiles, sports editor at the Robesonian, here for a quick 30-minute glance at the week that was in high school sports locally, and as well the week that is to come here with week 8 of high school football coming up on Friday night. So looking back at last week, a pretty busy weekend of football, and we're also going to talk a little bit of soccer here on the show. But week 7 of high school football, St. Paul's earned a 40-8 win at Red Springs, or at home against Red Springs, I should say. Jack Britt beat Purnell Sweat 10-0. Southview beat Lumberton 52-14. Midway beat Fairmont 50-22, and collegiately UNCP earned a 41-20 win over Wheeling. So jumping right in with the in-county game between St. Paul's and Red Springs. St. Paul's got off to a really quick start here with 2 touchdowns literally in 35 seconds. They almost brought back the opening kickoff, scored one play later on a Joshua McBride touchdown run. Red Springs' first play from scrimmage was a pass and catch, but it was fumbled, recovered by Dijon Roberts for St. Paul's. He ran it in, so it's quickly 14-0. And then Red Springs actually put together a pretty decent drive, but then it ended in an interception. St. Paul's ran that back inside the 20, and then 4 or 5 plays later scored again. So it was 20-0 there in about 7 minutes into the game. And it stayed that way until the end of the first quarter. That's when the unfortunate situation happened where there was a big fight between the two teams. Don't want to overdwell on this, but do want to give a little bit of information about this. First of all, I couldn't really see what happened. It was on the other sideline from where I was standing, and it was kind of, whatever happened to ignite it happened, and all of a sudden there's a big fight going on. So I can't really speak to that, but there were 12 St. Paul's players and 7 Red Springs players ejected in that situation. And it kind of, an officiating supervisor said it kind of may have been, I'm maybe putting words in his mouth a little bit here, but may have been kind of everybody that was around more or less was kind of implicated. But in the moment, that's easy to happen, but they were going to look at the film and make sure they got it right as far as who would get the 1-game suspension that automatically comes with that in the NCHSAA. So they reviewed the video over the weekend and ended up with 4 St. Paul's players and 3 Red Springs players getting that suspension, and everyone else is allowed to play on Friday night when St. Paul's is at Fairmont, Red Springs is at Clinton. There were guys ejected that seemed to me to be trying to pull guys back. So, and they were, in the area, so kind of got involved in that. So, it seems like they got it right as far as the suspensions go with this. And one other thing I want to point out, up until 2 years ago, 3+ ejections would carry a playoff disqualification. That rule no longer exists in the North Carolina High School Association, Athletic Association. So both of these teams, should they qualify organically, that's still to be determined, but both of these teams would be eligible for the state playoffs should they qualify over the next 4 weeks. Game eventually resumed. It was about a 30-minute delay as we tried to sort all this out, but and St. Paul's ultimately continued to build its lead and won 40-8. Joshua McBride had 102 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. And Coach Mike Setzer for St. Paul's said he felt like his team was on its way to playing the most complete game it had played in all facets before the fight happened. And, of course, 12 of its guys were not allowed to continue. But even without that, I would say to a degree that continued. They still controlled the game on both sides of the ball and continue to stretch out that lead, even with some personnel missing. So St. Paul's is at Fairmont, as I mentioned, this week. Red Springs has a challenge at Clinton, and we'll discuss that a little later on in the show. Jack Britt shut out Purnell Sweat 10-0. It was a defensive struggle both ways. Purnell Sweat's defense was actually really strong in this game. They just allowed an early touchdown and then a field goal a little bit later on, but that was it. But the offense struggled for the Rams for the second straight week. Had trouble punching it in the end zone when they gave themselves some opportunities. And so that's they scored 14 points 2 weeks ago against Cape Fear, and those were kind of later in the game once the outcome was not really in doubt, and then 0 against Jack Britt. So, and 2 straight losses for Purnell Sweat after a 4-0 start. And to be honest, it won't get easier the next 2 weeks either, with Southview and 71st on the docket. Southview, who is 5-1, I believe, and 1 loss on the season, and 71st, who is the heavy favorite in the United 8. So, and Jack Britt, by the way, has won 3 straight after their 0-3 start as well. So, a disappointing one there for Purnell Sweat, but they'll have the chance to regroup this week. Here on the Robesonian Sports Report on WAGR, I'm your host, Chris Stiles, sports editor at the Robesonian, going quickly over last week's high school football action locally. Southview earned a 52-14 win over Lumberton. The struggles continue for Lumberton. This is the 18th straight loss for the Pirates. Dennis McFadden, the head coach, did say, in the absence of some key players, of course they've had well-documented some injury issues, some attrition, but in those absences, some guys did step up for them. Michael Pitts threw a touchdown pass to Isaiah Gomez, and Jacoby Pevia, granted Pevia playing his original position, but he scored on a touchdown run as well. Southview's a top-tier team in the United 8, so scoring twice against them for the Pirates maybe potentially something to build on moving forward. And it seems like a lot of the defensive struggles they've had, they allowed 52 points in this game, but like a lot of struggling teams we've seen in high school football, a lot of that just amounts to field position and things like that, being put in tough spots. So, perhaps Lumberton can use those positives. Hard to see positives in a 52-14 loss, but Pirates looking for anything to build on at this point, and perhaps they can do so with that. Midway beat Fairmont 50-22. Midway did have its way kind of offensively, and as well in the special teams, recovered multiple onside kicks in this game. But it was Fairmont's best game offensively this season with 3 touchdowns. Gabriel Washington threw for 2 of those, rushed for the other. And this is an offense that's been searching for answers a lot this season. So did they maybe find some in this game? This is a very good Midway team that kind of takes a backseat to Clinton as far as people talking about in the conference. But this Midway team is in the top 10 as well in RPI for the 2A East region. So for Fairmont, can they perhaps, like I was really just saying about Lumberton, can Fairmont build upon this as they go into St. Paul's at home this week? And an offense that has struggled but played perhaps its best game here last week. UNCP beat Wheeling 41-20 at the college level here locally. This was a game that was tied at halftime, very even statistically in the first half. Both teams scored on their first drive of the second half. It was 20-20, and then from there it was all UNCP. They outscored Wheeling 28-7 in the second half. 2 school receiving records fell in this game. Trey Dixon had 4 receiving touchdowns. That was a new record. And 240 receiving yards was a new record. And he was named not just Mountain East Conference Player of the Week, but D2Football.com named him their National Offensive Player of the Week as well. So at the Division II level. So quite a week for Trey Dixon, the Scotland County product. Colin Johnson also tied a school record with 6 passing touchdowns. Luke Charles and Johnson now share that record. And the defense stood tough against a very strong Wheeling offense that had been firing on all cylinders the previous couple of weeks coming in. And first half, a couple of those scores were kind of coming off turnovers, things like that. Second half really shut them down and very effective on that end of the ball as well. Best game all the way around, all facets for UNCP. And now they head to Frostburg State as one of the top teams in the Mountain East Conference this week, and we'll talk about that a little bit coming up. And then In non-football news locally, the Robinson Cup final, the county soccer tournament, Lumberton defeated St. Paul's 3-2 in the championship game. Purdue Sweat also beat Red Springs 4-2 in overtime in the third-place match. But in the championship, it was a defensive struggle for the first 69 minutes of this game. It was 1-0 with 11 minutes left. That one goal was a spectacular bicycle kick goal by Emilio Carrera for the Pirates, giving them the lead. And then the game kind of flipped the switch, and there were 4 goals the last 11 minutes. Very exciting finish. Angel Robles for Lumberton took a 2-0 lead for them. St. Paul scored once on a penalty kick with Kevin Lopez, who actually scored both of their goals. And then literally 20 seconds later, on the other end, Corbin Walton scores to put Lumberton back up 3-1. And then Kevin Lopez, as I mentioned, scored again for St. Paul's. That was just with 5 seconds left. So they didn't really have a chance to get up after that and hit the equalizer. But real dramatic event. It was a good crowd, probably the best crowd that the event has had for its championship game. And just a great event all the way around for Robinson County soccer as high school soccer continues to grow here in the area. Just getting started here on the Robesonian Sports Report. Coming up, speaking of the Robinson Cup, we'll have Lumberton soccer coach Kenny Simmons will be joining us over the phone after this. This is the Robesonian Sports Report on WAGR. Back on the Robesonian Sports Report, I'm your host, Chris Stiles, and we're joined over the phone by Lumberton head soccer coach Kenny Simmons. How's it going, Coach?
Hey, Chris. Doing well.
Yep, and you guys coming off a victorious appearance in the Robinson Cup soccer tournament, the county soccer tournament, for the 4th time. That's every time on the boys' side that it's been contested, going back to 2019. So tell me about you guys' success in this tournament, both this year and overall.
It's 4 years running now. It was a very good game this year in the championship match against St. Paul's. St. Paul's got a good squad. Year in and year out, this has been our team goal. One of our team goals each season is to win the Robinson Cup. And our guys take it serious, and they know the importance of it. And I'm just glad we were able to win that game Saturday night. It was a difficult contest. Yeah,
we thought Saturday night probably the best of the 4 Robinson Cup, at least on the boys' side, best championship game that we've seen. Do you think maybe perhaps that means the field is catching up to y'all a little bit?
It could be the case. I knew coming in St. Paul's was going to be our stiffest challenge. And like I said, it was a quality game played by both teams from start to finish. And we made some plays down the stretch that we needed to make to win the game, and very fortunate.
Yep. And now 4 years into this event, started in 2019, and then a COVID year, and then 21 onto the present, it's been held. And, this was established as really a big growing ground for high school soccer in Robinson County. So a few years in here, what has it done for high school soccer in Robinson County?
I think it's got the interest level up, and you coincide that with the start of middle school soccer here with the public schools of Robinson County, and that's tremendous, and we hope the game will continue to grow, and I think it will. Be nice to see Fairmont one day field a team here in the county and give us 5 squads, but I think all 4 programs here in the county have seen major improvements here over the last 5 seasons, and that's exciting for the future.
Yep. And you guys' season at large in a tight conference battle in the United 8 with Cape Fear and with Jack Britt. As we record this, the Pirates and Cape Fear each with 1 conference loss. Cape Fear has played 1 more game, but both tied in the loss column, and then Jack Britt with 2 losses. So what's kind of the lay of the land in that conference battle in the United 8?
Well, at first I would like to say, overall it's been a good season. Got off to a slow start at the beginning in August, a little disappointing. You compound that with dealing with the extreme heat that we all had to deal with back in August. It was very difficult. we settled into our game, and we had to answer some questions. We had a lot of questions coming in about personnel and some roles within the squad. I think we sorted a lot of that out by late August over into early September. We had a nice run of games. There was an unbeaten streak there. I'm not sure how long it was, but it was pretty good for about a month. And then we get into conference play. And, I think coming into the season, we felt like that our stiffest challenge. And we were coming off two consecutive United 8 conference championships. And I think coming in, we were optimistic that we could compete for a third. We felt like coming in, our stiffest challenge would come from Jack Britt and Cape Fear. And we had early season wins in conference play against both of them. Unfortunately, we slipped up and lost last week, which snapped our 2.5-year win streak in this conference here at home against Cape Fear in an overtime game, 1-0. But we had a big win just 2 nights ago up at Jack Britt, and that kept us locked in with Cape Fear at the top of the standings. So a lot of soccer still to play, 6 remaining conference games. We're not looking past anybody. We're not looking past towards the postseason at all. We've got to focus on these 6 games individually and get the results we need, and we'll see where things fall at the end.
Yeah, you mentioned essentially a 2.5-year conference winning streak. It was 32 games, and it dated back all the way to when the United 8 Conference was established. And coincidentally, actually, Lumberton lost the last Sandhills game that it played, so it was also overall a 32-game conference winning streak. Didn't date back any further, but now with that in the rearview mirror, how do you kind of reflect on how impressive that is to win 32 straight conference games?
Well, it's not an easy feat. We had some good squads over that period of time, and a lot of good players come through the program. And that was a big goal of ours this season, to keep that streak alive and, again, contend for the conference championship. Disappointed to see it come to an end. It was a difficult loss to Cape Fear, a game that could have gone either way. Mm-hmm. Came down to 1 goal-scoring chance, and credit to them. They were able to make the play. Like I said, but our focus now is just getting back into conference and taking 1 game at a time. And, again, coming off the big win at Jack Britt, we've got Southview tonight here at home, which they're a much improved squad. So, we want to be at our best down the stretch and start fine-tuning things a little bit towards the end of the season.
And here on the Robesonian Sports Report, I'm your host, Chris Stiles. We're with Lumberton soccer coach Kenny Simmons. And you've been around a little while, a 3-decade career coaching high school soccer. How much has high school soccer changed in that 30-year span?
This is my 30th season here at Lumberton High School coaching the boys. I had 27 years with the girls before stepping aside 2 seasons ago and turning that program over to my assistant coach, Ethan Freeman. Prior to that, I taught 3 years, or coached 3 years of private school soccer down in South Carolina. So it's my 33rd year total. A lot of changes, but, at the same time, there's still dealing with high school kids, and the game's the game, soccer. I've definitely seen some improvements in the level of play across the board. When I first started 30 years ago, there were a lot of high schools in the area, even in some of the larger schools in the area that didn't even field soccer teams, So there's been a lot of new programs created over that 30-year span of time. And, for me personally, it's just been an enjoyable experience. And I hope the game will continue to grow here, not only regionally, but across the state. And it's going to be interesting in the future with the new classifications that may come out with through the North Carolina High School Athletic Association and see what that has in store for us. Over this 30 years here at Lumberton, we've played in a number of different conferences, had lots of different rivals over that period of time, from the Southeast Conference with, the rivalries with Pinecrest and Hoke and Richmond and Skyland, those guys, to our time in the Two Rivers Conference with some of the Fayetteville schools, when we had big rivalries on the soccer field with Jerry Sanford and Pine Forest and Southviews, and back into the Southeast Conference for a period of time. And now here we are in the United 8, developing new rivalries with Grays Creek and Jack Britt and Cape Fear, and, of course, our growing rivalry here in county with Purnell Swift. So the game has changed a lot, and I've experienced a lot. And, been a wonderful 30 years for me.
Yep. And a testament to that success is that the soccer facility at Lumberton High School is named the Kenneth W. Simmons Soccer Facility. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think you would know better than I would, but I don't believe Alton Brooks ever coached at Alton Brooks Stadium or Finley Reed ever coached at Finley Reed Field. You're getting the chance to do that, though, at the field that's named for you. So what is that experience like every day to pull in and see that name on the sign there?
I think I still have to pinch myself sometimes, you know. It's a tremendous honor, but very humbled. But at the same time, sometimes hard to believe. But, nothing changes. We're going to come out and each day and work at it and work hard and develop our kids in our program. And I think maybe in retirement years down the line, I'll, reflect a little more on that aspect of things and be a little more appreciative of it, I guess, then. But, right now it's just a sign. But it is a tremendous honor, though, and I'm very grateful.
Yep. And when people come to games there, they will hear at halftime, "In the Air Tonight," the Phil Collins classic. So, and we were joking a week or two ago about Monday Night Football starting to use that as their intro song. And you said, well, we've got them beat. We've been doing it for 10 years. But how did that tradition come about?
I'm not really sure, Chris, but I think everybody needs traditions, and you need certain things that you kind of establish within your program that you're kind of known for. And I don't know, somewhere around 10 years ago when we first started playing on the new field, somehow we got into the habit of playing that song at halftime, and our kids really got a kick out of it, man, those early years. And so we've just carried on that tradition. But I was joking with you and some other people recently about, I know in the NFL, Monday Night Football had developed that as their theme song. So I was like, hey, man, we've been there, done that. You guys are you're behind the times, man. We've been doing that for 10 years. So that's just something pretty cool we do. So.
Yeah. Coach Kenny Simmons, thanks for joining us.
Chris, thanks for having me. It's been a tremendous honor, man.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
We'll be right back with the Robesonian Sports Report on WAGR. Back on the Robesonian Sports Report here on WAGR, and as we do in the last segment each week, looking ahead to the current week of high school football here in Robeson County. It is week 8. Hard to believe that the season's going by that fast, but coming into the home stretch here, 4 games left for everyone. And starting off with, St. Paul's is at Fairmont, another in-county game. We've had a lot of them this year, which that's great. From my perspective of the Robesonian, it's great to have these county games. Unfortunately, last week's had the little ruckus between the teams, but hopefully we could have a fun, safe game on Friday night. But these two have had some great games over the years. It's kind of I've heard it called the battle for Old Stage Road because both schools coincidentally are located on an Old Stage Road. It's not the same road. Some 25 miles apart, but nonetheless, kind of having fun with that coincidence. But and this one's got some extra storylines in that Jeremy Carthen, who was an assistant at St. Paul's, is now the head coach at Fairmont. So first time he's facing his old team. That's always interesting anytime it happens, but I feel like with the St. Paul's coaching staff, they're really, first of all, a very strong coaching staff, but a tight-knit group of coaches. And so anytime someone leaves that group and comes back to face them, it makes it that much more bittersweet in a sense when they have to do that and go up against each other. Mike Setzer, the head coach at St. Paul's, had a comment, I'm paraphrasing him here, but basically to the extent of, I'm always a supporter of Coach Carthen, and will still be on Friday night, him as a person, but obviously I'm also trying to beat his team. So St. Paul's has 4 players suspended from the fight situation, but the Bulldogs come in having run the ball very well the last couple of games, both against Charlotte Latin and against Red Springs. And the game against Red Springs was really their best offensive game of the year. And the same can be said for Fairmont after Granted, it was in a loss, but their best offensive showing of the year came against Midway last week, scoring 22 points. So they're looking to build on that as well. So both sides kind of have something to build on from last week, even as it's coming from a little bit different angle. St. Paul's has won 3 straight. Fairmont has lost 5 straight since its season opening win, but nonetheless, they come into the game in those circumstances. St. Paul's has won 5 of the last 6 in the series. Fairmont did win in 2019, and must I say that was a thrilling game. Won on a late touchdown, and then St. Paul's tried to kick a field goal to win it, and it was blocked, or it might have been to tie it, but it was blocked to clinch the win for Fairmont. Before that 5 out of 6, though, for St. Paul's, Fairmont had won 7 of the previous 9, so kind of going back and forth in this series between a couple of Robeson County's 2A high schools. The other one, the other 2A school in Robeson County, Red Springs, is at Clinton this week. Clinton is 6-0. They're 1-0 in the Southeastern. Red Springs 3-3, kind of going back and forth for Red Springs as far as the results this year. It'll be an uphill climb for Red Springs, as it is anytime anyone faces the Dark Horses. This is a loaded team. Josiah McLaurin running the ball and receiving. Josiah Robinson's a great running back. Quarterback, Nadirian Blackwell. And that just scratches the surface on their offensive weapons. Tons of defensive pieces as well. Safety Alexander Evans and linebacker Jaden Williams among them. Red Springs does have 3 players suspended from that fight situation last week, and they're looking to regroup after the disappointment of the outcome in that game at St. Paul's. I don't think too many people expected, at least I didn't, that it would be 40-8 in that game. So I thought it would be closer than that. Red Springs looking to regroup after that. Clinton does lead the all-time series 5-1 with blowouts each of the last couple of years. The teams also played annually from 2001 to 2004. Red Springs won the game in 2004 for their only win in the series. Southview is at Purnell Sweat in a United 8 matchup. The Rams look at a rebound after back-to-back losses, which followed their 4-0 start. Southview has 5 wins this season. They're 5-1 overall, 2-1 in the league. Their 5 wins are all by 25 points or more, so they've been dominant when they've won. Their loss was a 47-14 loss to 71st, who is the favorite in the United 8. Pretty balanced offense for the Tigers. Christian Rutledge ran for 201 yards and 4 touchdowns last week against Lumberton, so now he's over 1,000 yards for the season and has 18 touchdowns. Tyreek Clarita has over 1,000 passing yards and 8 touchdowns, so they can beat you both ways, certainly. The Rams have struggled, as I mentioned earlier, on offense in the last 2 weeks with 14 total points in that span, so they'll be looking to get on the scoreboard a little bit more consistently in this one. Southview leads the all-time series 11-2. Purnell Sweat has lost 5 in a row to the Tigers, their last win in the series in 2006, and Southview has won with a couple of blowouts the last 2 years since this became a conference game. Here on the Robesonian Sports Report on WAGR, I'm your host, Chris Stiles, sports editor at the Robesonian, and a couple more to go over for this week. Lumberton's at Grays Creek. Pirates are winless on the season and in the league. Grays Creek is 4-2 overall, 1-2 in the conference. And the struggles continuing for Lumberton, and it's tough every week when this is a pretty deep conference this year in the United 8. And as a struggling team, you don't get to play yourself in a sense. So, I mean, the schedule's easier for the teams at the top because Lumberton's on it. Lumberton doesn't get to play themselves. So, and Grays Creek probably mid-pack in the league, but still a very, very strong team. As I mentioned, 4-2 on the season. The Bears are a very run-heavy team. Javon Webb and Tyler Davis have combined for 21 rushing touchdowns between them, and a couple of talented linebackers as well on defense with Jackson Karcher and Caleb Caraway for Grays Creek. Interestingly, these two teams had not met before the last 2 years in the United 8 Conference. Grays Creek won those 2 matchups, 34-9 and 35-7. And then UNC Pembroke is at Frostburg State this week. Braves are 3-2 in the overall, 2-2 in the Mountain East. Frostburg State 3-1 and 2-1. And UNCP, I mentioned, complete performance last week, offense, defense, you name it. And they're looking to build off of that to continue that momentum. Frostburg State coming off a tight loss to Notre Dame College, not the Fighting Irish, but the other Notre Dame in Ohio. and they're all in a big, crowded race in the Mountain East Conference. The top 7-8 teams are pretty tight in the standings, and anybody can beat anybody any given week. Frostburg is holding opponents to under 18 points a game, under 100 rushing yards per game, so that'll be a challenge for the Braves' offense. Frostburg is a balanced offense, one that not a ton stands out statistically, but they're very serviceable as a unit and as a team. Coach Mark Hall at UNCP has talked about the importance of winning on the road. If the Braves can win this one, they'll be 2-1 on the road this season. All-time series tied at 2-2. Frostburg, or rather UNCP, won last year 10-9 here in Pembroke. And you can read about all this on the Robesonian, in the Robesonian, and at Robesonian.com. Previews for this week's games, gamers from last week, picks column as well for the high school games. UNCP game preview will be coming Friday morning, and as well coverage of the other fall sports that are going on. Soccer we've talked about in this show, volleyball, and then also some Lumberton Purdell Sweat tennis coverage from Wednesday afternoon. So as always, your home for all things local sports here in Robeson County is the Robesonian and Robesonian.com. For Paul Matthews behind the scenes, flipping the switches, and for Kenny Simmons, thanks to him for joining us, the Lumberton soccer coach. I'm Chris Stiles. Thanks for joining us here on the Robesonian Sports Report on WAGR.